you know, fear appeals just generally do not work for people. Like there's a lot of evidence that the more vivid you make it in terms of dramatic, you know, just couching it in that really negative way isn't the most useful thing, and that you have to kind of have some sort of supportive, positive thing for people to move forward.
I would say actually fear appeals work really, really well, and people are far more freaked out by terrorism than they have any right to be mathematically, because there's a fear around it. I mean, if you actually look at the numbers, if say Al-Qaeda wanted to keep up with the US tobacco industry, they would have had to hijack, these figures are a bit old now, but they would have had to hijack, I think, 580 planes a year. That's assuming every attack is as big as 9/11. That's 11 planes a week, okay? So tobacco kills way more people than terrorism, but people are more scared of terrorism because it's big and it's visceral and it's immediate. The problem with climate is it's so slow moving. So you can use really dramatic fear-based language, but it's all going to happen in kind of 60 years in Bangladesh. And you know, people just don't care. And if you look at all the things people get addicted to, they're all things that give you short-term pleasure, long-term pain. So sugar, gambling, porn, fatty food, alcohol, cocaine, all of these things give you an immediate reward. Nobody would smoke if you got lung cancer immediately and waited 15 years to sort of smell awful but look kind of cool. We wouldn't have a population problem if you had a kid immediately and had to wait 9 months for an orgasm. But that's not how we've been designed. We're designed for short-term pleasure rush, and unfortunately, the things that carbon gives you, like getting to fly to Brazil or getting to drive somewhere or have an interesting, you get the benefit immediately, and the negative effect is felt in 50 years' time, halfway around the world. It's very hard to get people tuned into that and conscious of that impact.
No, I completely agree with loads of things you're saying, but I think it's really hard for people when you're the own villain in your own story, and
that is really
that's
hard.
really difficult.
No, that's incredibly difficult. That's, as a comedian, I started out doing a show in Guantanamo, and I thought, okay, climate can't be that much harder. But what I actually found was the end of a show in Guantanamo is basically, this is really stupid. If we all close it down, we'll all be much better off, and it'll be less stupid. Everyone's happy. The end of a show on climate is, we're screwed, and it's your fault. And if you want to stop it, you have to stop driving, flying, eating meat, etc. And people go, no thanks. So yeah, it's a much harder sell, but it's a much bigger problem.
The trouble with the shock horror there, I mean, I agree totally. I mean, I think we should spend a good bit of time here talking about language and how to describe things, because that's exactly what and we're failing totally. But people, when you give them the shock horror story, and then nothing happens. They get cynical, and that's a big problem.
You're right.
And I heard John Sweeney the other day, actually, and the modelling shows in climate that he's using and everybody else is using, that Ireland is going to have much drier summers and much wetter winters.
Yes.
Now the fact is, since the modelling was produced, we've had wetter summers consistently. But still I heard John saying we're going to have drier summers. And the average public is saying, what kind of horseshit is this?
Here's the thing,
So there's a disconnect.
It's changed blindness.
So we kind of lock in on a paradigm, this is what the model says. And then we can, even though the evidence in the short term is showing the exact opposite. So there's that, try to fit with the experience people have. And the fact is, in Germany, for example, it was the flooding that triggered their big concern, and it was the huge deaths of older people, especially in Paris, a few summers later. Those are the two big events that get to your thing. It's actually happening now.
Exactly. It's happening, and the thing is, in Ireland, the evidence in Ireland is it will get wetter generally, and it will be wetter. I think my understanding of the evidence is there will be more moisture in the air because warmer air carries more moisture, and therefore the rainy places get rainier and the sunny places get sunnier. So that's my understanding of the actual impact it's going to have.
But you see, modelling it. You see, Ireland is a tiny little speck.
Yes, of course.
So you have this huge macro model.
Of course.
But the fact is, you have to relate to people's experience. So we should say, look, the model said this, but actually this is what's happening. It's still all changing. So you can demonstrate the change unambiguously.
Sure.
What shape it takes, what happens next year is completely, and that's what makes it complicated.
And because weather changes so much every day, people can sort of point to an outlier and go, oh look, it's all nonsense. The Daily Show did a brilliant thing on this, where when people pointed to the snow in America, Snowmageddon, and went, look, clearly climate change, global warming isn't happening because it's getting colder. They did this wonderful report where they went, well, I'm in Australia and it's been getting steadily warmer for the last 4 months. Because, well, here in Alaska it's been getting steadily colder for the last 4 months. And they went, John, an hour ago the sun was in the sky. Now it's not. What the hell is happening? Just making that point that it's local, but you've got to look at the big picture and measure globally, and that's how it works. So,
but I think the language thing is really, because time after time my neighbours say to me exactly what you're saying. what's wrong with global warming? You know, I mean,
yeah, exactly.
It's
Wouldn't it be nice?
You know, wouldn't it be nice to be warm?
If you
Bit
lived
of
in the
change.
north of Siberia, you probably would.
Oh, it'd be great.
And the Russians,
Russia
I mean,
loves
if
it.
you
The
go
Russians love
to,
it.
when you go to international conference, the Russians are seeing the, you know, the
Greening of
the
Siberia.
passage and all this kind
Oh,
of stuff.
totally.
They have to,
All the oil and gas they can get at now.
so I
it's-
mean, it is.
But I think you're right, Frank, that you know, you can engage with this topic intellectually. You can get John Sweeney to describe simulation and models, and that's fine. But you know, really, at the heart of this is about changing people's behaviour, and some of it can be achieved by that shock and awe, that fear factor. But you know, I think if you want to change people's behaviour over a long period of time, it involves education, it involves fear, it involves you know, some sense of emotional engagement with the topic.
One thought I had on that just yesterday was, what if we just totally redesigned the tax code? What if we said, if you don't pollute, you are going to pay almost no taxes? But if you pollute, and we just change it in the way we have with the common agricultural policy. It used to be about, exactly, hit people in the pocket. Seriously, it used to be all about, let's produce as much food as possible. And we had these just milk lakes and wine lakes and all that. It was disastrous. Yeah. And then we went, hang on a second, let's make these people environmental stewards and pay them on that basis. And redesign the tax code going, look, if we want a human civilization to be around for longer than a few hundred years, this is how we have to do it. And if you're doing something that's environmentally sustainable, we are going to massively incentivize that. If you do that, I think you can sort of, if you get political consensus on, you can pay a lot less tax, as well as you'll pay more tax if you're polluting things. Because at the moment we just treat nature like it's a business going into liquidation. Right. You know, how quickly can you turn this forest into cash? Who cares about what's left behind? Or how quickly can you turn this gas mine into cash and forget the clean water, which is which is invaluable, but which nobody values because no one owns it. Yeah. So
I think you can jolt people like that and say, hey, you just need to change your behaviour, or else you're going to end up paying more taxes or whatever.
But actually getting the taxes implemented, I mean, I'm doing an article on the Irish carbon tax, and I met with John Gormley and the lads a few days ago, and John said that during the election, petrol stations in his constituency had...
She's the one who has ended up suffering for all this, we're not as much. She is the reason we're doing this, having this conversation.
But there are pictures of John on petrol stations saying, you're the cause of the high petrol charges and this kind of stuff. Yeah. So it's a brilliant idea, but getting there is huge because all the vested interests are... And then Bord Gash, as it was, started showing, which I thought was a good idea, but on the bill they showed how much of your bill was the carbon tax.
Right.
But politically, apparently, this was lethal.
Because people say, oh, bloody carbon taxes.
These bastards in the Greens.
So, do you think we're in some kind of collective denial about this thing? That you know,
it's raining on me.
Just, we're pretending that it doesn't exist, or
well, I think the short term is the key. You know, like it's a question of sacrificing today for tomorrow, and most of us don't want to do that.